Alright everyone, Lego is back from the dead, so to speak, with a project here, which has taken up a lot of my time. So it's not that I'm dead, I promise. It's not nothing really to it. This just took longer than expected. So what you're seeing me do right now, and we'll get back to the big thing, but what we're doing right now is I'm simulating a curved surface here with a bunch of ellipses and circles on that face. So I managed to trace a. It's not a tetrahedron. It's something else. It's a base 12, I think. Yes, base 12 shape, and then I made some faces on top of that to simulate a sphere. Now I'm making up X amount of circles in increments of some distance, and now I'm taking those shapes and I'm making some numbers off of them. And these numbers are Sherman numbers, so you'll see the classic syntax of the decimal point being thicker. And now I'm just making up 6 different numbers. And the idea here is to put those numbers in those faces and deform them such that they seem to be stuck onto the face of that. And when you then remove the poly 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 polyhedron, I think it is. When you remove the polyhedron, it'll be my version of a simulated curved surface. So the idea here was to have a ball with some numbers on it, and so far so good. Now that was a little warm-up thing. The meat of this project is what you're about to see here. I have a lot of discs around that center ball, and on those discs I will make some segments, segmented discs, and how I divide up those segments is going to take up the next hour or so of my life, but it'll be a lot quicker for you guys. So I have X amount of shapes, I have X amount of symbols, I have X amount of letters and numbers, and these I am trying to disperse evenly throughout this project. So I'm trying to make some informed decisions about the density, how many um, how many layers I need, how many objects I need on those layers, and how I am going to deal with the fact that some layers have more letters than others. So I need different amounts of um, I need a different amount of tiles for different layers. So I spent a bunch of time just mucking about in Inkscape with this, and at the end of it, I just decided to wise up and actually just make a spreadsheet, a real spreadsheet. But for now, I'm just trying to calculate in my, just doing some mental math and some mental simulations about how that would look and stuff. But in hindsight, that was wasted time because I should have just mapped it out in a spreadsheet to begin with. But here we are, trying to mix and match and make everything the way I suppose it should be, making sure everything adds up, making sure that I'm not forgetting anything. Because once I do this, it'll be really hard to change the fundamental shape and fundamental order and the hierarchy of this. So it'll have to be perfect first try, or at least anything I change will have to be made pretty early on. So with this layout of shapes, I am now tweaking the orientation a little bit to my design, and this is pretty much going to be the basis. Now we have the foundation, now we have what I like to call the boundary, and now we get to the meat of it. If you recognize this project as it unfolds, then you already know what I'm talking about. If you don't recognize this, I'm not going to spoil it. So all you need to know for now is that I need a lot of numbers, and I need a lot of numbers on these discs. And my idea was, quite simply, to place every set of numbers that I know of in Gallifreyan onto this disk. At the time of this video, the amount of systems that I know of that carries the ability to write numbers from 0 to 9, sometimes 1 to 9, as is the case with Gallifreyan right now. It doesn't have the letter number, it doesn't have the 0, but I'll make do. But otherwise, just use whatever syntax is available in the different scripts to write the numbers that I need. So this is Thessalonian. It has a thing with bases, so I need to add on that frame to make it base 10, and so on and so forth. So you'll see me do all sorts of numbers. You'll see more number systems here than you've probably ever seen before in Gallifreyan. Even though you are a seasoned scribe, I bet you'll see 1 or 2 systems here which you didn't really know of. Some are more abstract than others, but at the base of it, this is me trying to figure out and keep track of all the different scripts and numbers and what number needs to go where, because there is a specific sequence to this that I need to nail in order to have this project work out. So I can't just put them willy-nilly. There's a certain sequence, there's a certain order that I need to adhere to in these. For instance, what you're seeing right now is Gallifreyan B, which is a script with no freedom of architecture whatsoever. It's a little bit of a thought project that way. So I won't bore you with the details because I don't know the script as such, but I know it has numbers, and I learned just enough to do this, and probably nothing else. But the idea here is, luckily for me, I can just repeat a lot of the same characters. A bit like Art by Boredom or Dark Affair, neither of which will appear here because they don't have any numbers. Now, some scripts are easy to place onto a curved surface like this. Other scripts are not really meant to do that. So you'll see throughout this project some liberties with various placements. Sometimes I bend the rule a little bit in order to maybe omit a piece of clarification. Maybe there's a little bit of something in the architecture that needs to be included to be a number. Maybe I'm omitting that a little bit. But overall, I'm actually pretty amazed at how many of these scripts can be used as is without having to do any sneaky stuff. I tried to space them out evenly whenever possible. So some of the scripts have a circular boundary regardless of what you do with them. Those are easy to place in even steps on the different disks because you can just do the rotate copy thing. Other scripts are more spread out and need their own touch altogether. The script you're seeing right now is, you probably caught it, maybe if you're quick. This is a mystery script in most regards. Me and a couple of other scribes are still trying to figure out what it actually means. We're still trying to decode this thing. We have a key and we have a bit of a rosette stone, but no concrete definitive proof. Nonetheless, the letters being pretty hard, while the numbers are sort of easy to follow, so I just copied those. It is a legit script, as far as we can tell, but only knowing the numbers is enough for me right now. So that worked out pretty well, I think. And some bugs with the architecture there. One of the few things that still plague me, the bug of having too big of a meter limit for sharp edges. It haunts me to this day. So I'm trying some red dots to sort of line up the center-ish of each of these. So that's something. And then I'm also orienting most of these relative to the center of the actual circle. So it inherently makes sense in any direction. I couldn't do that for all of them, but I did for most of them. Now at this point, we're about 3 or 4 scripts in, and I've sort of found my methodology. I've found my workflow for this. So I'm copying the, well, first off, I'm making, with the bucket tool, the base tiles, putting them off to the side, making one unit or one base shape for the letter, for those characteristics they share. Then I'm taking that base shape, and then I'm using the rotate copies life path effect to distribute that base shape onto all the tiles that I need. And from then on, I split everything up and make the individual numbers that I need. So at this point, it goes a lot faster. And also, some of the most problematic scripts are sort of behind us now. So some of these are pretty easy to knock out. Doesn't take a lot of time. The only thing I need to be wary of at this point is to put the biggest scripts, those with the longest characters or the most work, in the outer layers where each individual tile has more space to work with. So I'm trying to put the smallest scripts, those with the smallest symbols and easiest symbols, in the center where the tiles are very small. And then I'm trying to shift some of the bigger, more elaborate texts out to the outer edges where you have a little bit more real estate to work with. Even though it's not a ton, it's still something. So what are we on to now? We are on to, oh, this looks like TARDIS console, I think. Yeah, it's TARDIS console. So that's one of the most boring systems, I think, frankly. It's just a little solar system with a center dot and then just other small planets in orbit around. So it's like a little bit of a star chart. Very simple design, not unlike the Grobberfayan design or there is one more system that uses these. It's escaping me at the moment. Sort of Rook, but not really Rook. No. It reminds me a bit of Shambles Gallifreyan. It also has that dots in a row thing, but it's easy to follow. It's not complicated. It's a very simple system. Nothing wrong with that. Now at this point, I mark out some red and purple areas, and that's because I'm going to reserve these for special characters, because there are not just numbers mixed in with this. There is 2 other types of tiles as well. There are some Greek letter tiles, and there are some star sign tiles with the different star signs. So you have the Taurus, you have I don't really know these in English. I don't know what they're called, but there's, the star signs. You know the star signs. So these are reserved for those. So I'm doing my numbers around those for now, and then later I'm going to do the special characters on their own. They're going to have their own script and setup because, well, they're not numbers. What we're doing now, we are doing Doctor's Cut, I see. That's a fairly nice script to spread out. It takes a lot of, you can make it take a lot of space, so that's fine. Now we are doing something very obscure. We are doing, I think I saw a glimpse of Time Rotor. No, we shifted. I changed my mind apparently. We are doing a script that is basically, script is a strong word, but it is the WS simple font, which is a full complete font with both, no, it only has small characters, lowercase characters and numbers. That's basically it, but that's enough. It's pretty elaborate. I've never seen anyone use it freehand, and as you saw there, I didn't do it freehand either. I just used the font and then changed those into paths so I can manipulate the lines later, because I don't want them to stop into nothing. I want them to continue on out of the tile. But That's one you don't see every day for sure. Yeah, I bet there's a few scripts in here. Once I present this to the rest of the community, there's going to be a few of those they probably won't recognize right off the bat. I'm very excited about this. I wouldn't recognize some of these out of hand if I hadn't made this. So, I mean, I have that advantage. What we're doing now is, as I thought before, we're doing time order. Very confusing, or at least abstract script, but the number system is more straightforward. It's definitely complicated, but it's not as complicated, and it has a completely separate structure to the text-based architecture. So you can learn one thing and still know nothing about the other half, essentially. Now, spreading quickly onto this looks like Gallifreyan. Yes, it is. And here is one of the few times I'm bending the rules a little bit, because strictly speaking, you do need a center dot. You need a center dot, center line, center circle to denote this as a number system instead of the text-based letters. And obviously I can't do a center dot here because there is no center. It's a small piece of an arc going around a center, but I snuck in a little bit of a circle there in the middle of those tiles, and based on context of all the other tiles around it being numbers, I'm going to pretend that that's good enough for me to give the impression that this is actually, for realsies, still a number, even though strictly speaking it would probably be taken as a letter-based code on its own. Now, this is another script that I don't know about in a text-related context, but for the numbers, I sat down and learned just enough to use this, and this is Shambles Gallifreyan, and it has these long branches, sort of, kind of like Rook Gallifreyan, but also kind of like the Grabafreyan number system, albeit more free to take other shapes and sizes. So this is what you're seeing me do here. I'm making a lot of loose branches, and the different kinds of dots and circles on those branches denote the different numbers. And it has this really cool thing where the numbers sit between two solid dots, at least I think they do. So that is an easy tell for this script that, hey, all those dots on the edges there would make this into a Shambles project. This is a really obscure one, and it's not obscure because it's old, it's obscure because it's not released yet. Maybe it never will be, but as far as I can tell, it has numbers. I liked it. It's very unique in many aspects, but I'm just focusing on the numbers right now. I know nothing about the letters, at least nothing useful. But it has this almost Morse code-like punctuation system, and the number system. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say letters a lot when I mean numbers. The number system is unique in that it also looks like sort of Morse code-like applications with dots and lines and dashes. That's common for all the numbers, so I just need to alter some of the modifiers for each individual number to get the desired digit. But it has a lot of dots around the edges that makes it a very easily recognizable script as well. Even though probably no one will probably recognize this right off the bat, because again, it's not released. It's probably 3 or 4 months old, but it is not. It's not released yet. Now we are onto something that I sat down and learned just for this project as well, which is a very old script, relatively old. It's Flux. The original Flux script has a number system based on Roman numerals and the same structure and the math of the way things are laid out ties over into this, and it's really nice script. I never used flux ever, the number, the actual letters, the alphabet. I've used Diaflux a couple of times, and it's still in development, but it had a number system unlike Diaflux, so I snuck that in here as well. Now we're on to the long branches of Rook, and Rook has, you can see a glimpse on there on the right. Rook has two different syntaxes, or at least two different architectures of its number system. It has a straightforward system of lines and almost like tally marks, and then it has a more flowy, branchy look. And I decided to go for the branchy look here because I felt like I could take up more real estate with this. If I have a script that can take up space, I tend to let it take that space. And that's what I did here. I actually ended up getting pretty crowded in some areas because for the bigger digits, for the 9, I believe, that needs 5 parallel branches with their own endpoints. But I am pretty sure I figured it out in the end. And it's just one of those number systems where you just have to count a lot and keep a hold of how many lines and how many digits and how many spaces. And it's not one of those quick systems where you can just take a glance at something and see, oh, that's a 5. You have to sit down and count and double count and make really sure that you counted the right amount. So as a number system, it's not really good, but it is unique, and it fits on my list. So here we are. Now on to Astra. Astra Gallifreyan is relatively new, and I believe this is my first excuse to use it. So I sat down and learned not just the actual number system, which was my first idea to just learn the number system, but I also changed my mind halfway through the project and decided to learn the actual letters, because what better way to write star signs than with a script called Astra, inspired by astronomical star charts and whatnot. That fit very thematically perfect to this, so I decided to sit down and learn the whole thing, which I did. So, or at least enough for my purposes. So at this point, there's no numbers left. I did everything. I think there is 16, 17 different scripts at this point in use for the numbers, and I gave it everything I got. I don't have anything left. No numbers left, as far as I know. But we still have the text, as you'll see here. We have some Greek letters, and then we have the star signs. I started to tackle the Greek letters first. It is the whole Greek alphabet, ironically enough written out in Latin English, but I don't have the time to sit down and learn the Greek version of Diaflux Beta just to sit down and write the phonetically correct Greek names for the Greek letters in an otherwise English project. So forgive me for not doing that, but at least we have the letters present, and that's what I am doing now. I had to refactor and remake all my tiles for this, because at the time when I made the tiles, I just wanted to denote the area. I didn't need those tiles to be fancy and good and crisp and clean, but now I suddenly decided I did. So here we are, after some refactoring and some rework. We have the actual tiles, and I have a convenient chart of the tables in the middle, and now it's just on to writing. Now, I could have chosen a lot of scripts to write the Greek letters. I chose to use a script that I already used for the numbers. So I could have snuck even more scripts in there by changing the actual text here to a new script. It could have been Dark Affair. It could have been Out by Boredom. It could have been, I don't know, It could have been CC Gallifreyan or GC, but I chose Rook mostly because Rook has triangle vowels, and I thought that was a nice touch with the Greek letter delta, and honestly, a couple of the other letters as well have that really rigid, sharp-cornered style to them. So the triangles being a part of the script to denote the Greek characters felt appropriate. So that's what I did. The only issue I had, no, I'll get back to that later. So I'm doing that right now, and Rook is basically Sherman, but unfurled on purpose. So there's not really a lot to it. You've seen Rook on this channel before. The only thing I want to point out, and I'll do that again later, the delta text has two triangles, conveniently, two triangles on it. And I decided to make those into a little Easter egg for a future project. And I'll get back to that way later, but for now, just know that those triangles there do serve a secondary purpose, completely intentionally, by choosing this script. Really pleased with that, actually. What else can we talk about here? Well, you're seeing me knock out some letters in the center, blah blah blah. For now, once I'm done, all of these pre-text characters and all the numbers that I made in the different scripts, they have their own layer, but I have a copy off to the left, which is where you're seeing me work right now. And then I'm taking a finished copy of those back into the workspace and making those the finalized versions later, which means that I have just the most disorganized, chaotic bunch of stuff stuck off here to the left. If I turn every layer on, it'll look like chaos. And I used that. I couldn't help myself. I had to take a couple of screenshots of those chaotic moments while making this and shared them on the Discord channel, being like, "Hey guys, this is what I'm doing. It looks a little bit off now, but I'm sure it'll be good once I'm done." I had way too much fun at that. So apologies to anyone if that annoyed you, but I had to pretend that was my project, even though it probably didn't fool anyone. Now, Rook for the Greek, I already explained that, but once I'm done with that in a moment, I'm going to switch to the star signs, and the star signs, as I already said, should really the only real way to do that would be in Astra. So I sat down and learned Astra, and as you might see in a moment, that involves a lot of nitpicky behavior of the lines. I'll get back to that, but that was really tedious, and it took way longer than I probably should have to make that for a measly 12-letter word, 12 different words in Astra. So that was the thing that happened. But we're now done with the Greek, more or less, using the tiles to cut into those bits and pieces, so I only have the tiles, and then I'm moving those over back into the actual workspace later. So taking a step back from this for a moment, I just want to talk about why this took so long. You can probably tell the amount of stuff that goes into this, but even though there's a lot going on here and there's a lot of scripts, the amount of words here is not that big. Most of my time went towards learning, thinking, planning, and then being distracted by other stuff. So I had to learn Astra, as I already said multiple times. I also had to learn 2 or 3 other scripts, just the number section, but nonetheless, a couple of other scripts for the first time. I had to use those, and some other stuff that also distracted me. So I wasn't just doing this. For instance, what you're seeing me now is me doing a test on GC to see if I wanted GC to be the star sign symbol. and I decided I did not. I wanted Astra, as you'll see here. So that was just a quick demo, and now we're doing Astra. Sorry. One of the annoying things about Astra I've discovered is that it's not very well. It doesn't do compact stuff at all, because you require apparently to have a word line that connects between stuff, but most of the time that line is not actually connected to the individual letters. So I have to have the line, but it can't connect to anything really unless it's really intentional. And that means that I have all these small, insignificant snippets of arcs, and they're so small and so inconsequential on their own. You would never look at it twice, but you have to have them between all the letters, and together they do. They do appear like one big arc, just interrupted by all the letters. But on their own, it's really ugly. Is not the right word, but it is really insignificant. So it takes a ton of time, and it's annoying. One of the symbols in Astra has this weirdly soft star sign, and it took me a while to mimic that in a way that didn't involve a ton of path operations, but I got it done. And especially, yeah, as you can see, the long vowels and the long words, just they're really cramped, because I have to have all these small spaces with just a hint of different letter interactions between. Here's the exception. This one star sign required a Q, and Astra doesn't have Q. So I had a choice to make. I could either substitute the Q for something else, or I could not use Astra for that. And I decided, absolutely not. I'm not going to substitute anything. That's not my style. That's not what I do. But I already decided on Astra for this, so I can't back out now and change everything up. I still like the reasons for doing it with Astra. It has a really good thematic connection, but I needed the Q. So I booted back to GC as I did in the very first test, and made that in GC, and in that manner, technically speaking, I am adding GC to my list of scripts that I used in this, even though it's just for a single word that couldn't otherwise be written. Sue me if you want, but that is my excuse. We're back in Astra now with the rest of the text, and I, again, just like in the number section with all the different discs, I consciously knocked out the biggest words first in the outer discs, because there's frankly more space. I'm leaving the small, inconsequential letters for the innermost areas where there is a little bit less space, and I have a little bit more freedom to style my characters in a certain way when it isn't so cramped. Now, as I said before, I've been distracted with, first of all, reading new guides, learning new guide materials. I've also written a couple of new quick guides for new systems to help myself do this. And besides that, I have been a bit busy with a couple of personal projects that don't get on YouTube. Some personal stuff, projects for real people with real, with their names and stuff on. So I'm not gonna publish those. And besides that, I am also preparing for some other real life stuff. So in between this, there was a lot of learning and a lot of other stuff going on. So this is my main excuse. But nonetheless, here we are 15 hours later. It took almost 15 hours to make, what is that? About 300 characters. Different characters, yeah, that sounds about right. So what, if you do the math on that, that'll be, I don't know, 15 times 60. A lot of minutes per character, which is, not a good metric, but apparently that's what it takes. Well, what else do we have to talk about here? I don't have anything clever to say about Astra yet. I've only used it this once, but so far, apart from the fact that it's very tedious to make all those small, insignificant connections between the letters, it's a really nice script. I like the fact that you can stack, but according to some very specific instructions. So you can't just stack willy nilly as you want. There are certain rules, which also means there are certain things you can't stack, which you normally would be able to, but that's just a quirk of the script. So you have to roll with it. But I like the different kinds of stacking you can do, and when you have the freedom and space to make something not cramped, I'm sure it's gonna look amazing. I just don't have that luxury this time. What we're doing now is we're past the hard part. Now I am actively finalizing the individual segments and starting some preemptive color coding so I can get an idea of what is the color space going to be, how big are my text going to be, how can I do the contrasts. I'm starting to think a bit about background as well, and how I'm going to make everything visible, while at the same time adhering to the vision in my head about how everything is going to end up looking. I'm having bronze and brass in my mind right now as I'm doing this, so that's why you're seeing that particular color code. And I am also, I don't know if you caught it, I added a little bit of a border to the TARDIS console script because it was just too boring, frankly. It was just a boring dot with some other dots in the middle. It didn't really have a character, it didn't really have anything, really. If you didn't know that was TARDIS console, it wouldn't really look like anything. So I added some decorational borders to hopefully give it a little bit more of an identity. If you know TARDIS console, the one thing you should probably know about it is it's very, very important on decorations. It takes itself very seriously when it comes to borders, and the amount of decorational, non-functional elements in TARDIS console is staggering, or at least it can be. So there's that. What are we doing now? We are finalizing the star signs, cutting those up, converting them to pairs, making everything fit inside the actual tiles, and after sorting out some duplicates, I can finalize those, stamp them out, and here we are with basically a complete thing, except for one tiny mistake I made here, and I'm going to do some surgical removal of that. And here we are. This is pretty much the base text. Now I'm adding some background stuff, and I'm doing a little bit of tweaking on the ball in the center. I tried to make it more curvy, so because some of the numbers in the edge still looked a little bit flat, and if you know how I made those, how I mapped those on, it might still look a bit boring. So I tried to give it more of a 3D effect by warping some of the outer colors. Some of the edges didn't really work out, so I instead just made a custom drop shadow with some clip groups, and even though it didn't quite do what I wanted, I ended up liking it pretty much. So it gave it just enough of a 3D effect to sell the effect that this is a ball. This is different from all the other stuff you see. And I added a little bit of a glass effect, glass dome thing, just some glare at the top to furthermore just break it up a little bit. And I think I got away with it pretty well. Having the ball done, now I am doing the background. I need the contrast between the tiles and the background, and at the same time I'm not quite sure how I want to go about that because I have several different ideas at this point. I am thinking about vector textures on top of all the discs to make them look like a little bit of smudge, a little bit of grunginess, like they're old and maybe they are, you know, a little bit dirty, a little bit old, and has that distressed look. Because right now they're squeaky clean and totally shiny bronze discs, and I'm not sure if I like that at this point. But starting off the background, I added some shadow to the ball to make it look like it's actually above the rest, casting shadow on the other stuff. Um, and now I've settled on not doing vector textures on top of every disc. That was my original intent, but holy how, there is a lot of discs at this point, and it would take absolute ages to do masks on all of that. So what I instead decided to do was I made a grid of all the empty spaces between the discs, raised that on top, added a little bit of a blur to that, and actually ended up doing an offset on all of these tiles to give it a raised border, almost like a bezel. And when I shone that back on, gave it a little shining, gave it a little really cool, really nice bronze texture. No, not texture, a gradient. That really sold it very well, I think. I liked it immediately. And now all I had to do was shift up all the nuances a little bit so it wasn't so flat. And once I did that, I actually really liked it, even without the added texture on top. I could live with the shiny borders and the shiny surfaces, because at this point it really looks good, and I really like that. It broke it up nicely, so it wasn't just one flat color, and they're all distinct. They went pretty great. Now the small delta that you saw there was the Easter egg I was talking about. I'm not gonna spoil it, but there's a really good reason for those. And now the last thing I tried to do, is I tried to shift them up a little bit, those layers, so they weren't so. They look too deliberate right now. They look too orderly. But I came into an issue where once I get out to the layers with both text and numbers, I couldn't shift those anymore, because then I would need to break up every single tile from that point onward and shift them individually and group them together in new orders, and I absolutely did not want that. It's been 6 weeks at this point. I'm really, really happy with the project, but I don't want it to go on anymore. I'm done. So I shifted the inner 6 layers, which was easy to do, and then I redid the borders, the raised bezels, and then I called it a day. I did not shift the outer layers, so they're still very strict, very straight, and very snapped to the center point. They look too good compared to the innermost, but I'm happy. I'm done. I'm happy. If you know, as I said in the beginning, if you know where this is from, especially now that you've seen the whole thing, if you know where this is from, digital cookies to you. Happy to hear that. And if you don't know what this is about, maybe you should go read some books, I think. Just a tip there. And with that, I'll end this project here. It has been a long, tedious journey of writing a ton of numbers and learning a couple of scripts along the way, at least partially, and using that knowledge to really showcase the different number systems in Gallifreyan, because this is what this is. Here is more or less a complete list of numbers in Gallifreyan that we currently know of, with 1 or 2 exceptions probably. And with that, I'm happy, and I'm done. Lego out. I'm not dead, I promise. Bye.